So we're making some coffee and drinking this brand from Walmart. Gotta say, it's not that good. And I add a little heavy cream in here. And this is my first day back on carnivore. But and Walmart really does have inferior, but I'll usually get it back up. You know, got a bunch of bacon in here. These are all hamburger patties. I want to do a video here. And then turn it down. Turn it down a bit so I'm not burning the hell out of it. I wanted to do a video on meaning and how phone is a little bit top heavy, so I can never like find a spot. That's why I always just hang on to it. I do have a tripod, but it's we're just waking up right now. Anyway, that didn't go too well. It's better when I put it to the side, but Samsung. I wanted to do a video on meaning and how that's really what we do every single day, is we are searching for meaning. And the way that society is set up is that we are searching for meaning and validation, these validator nodes, right? That we have unwittingly become nodes to one another. Validation, invalidation, and nobody ever gets anything done. There are no occupations that don't completely, like, you will go with, whether you're printing something off or buying a car, you will go with the status quo by way of consensus. And you know that that directive, that way, has no meaning, right? It's devoid of meaning. But there's a, you want to join the consensus based on the psychical programming, right? What is in your psyche, what is left in your psyche. That avoids meaning. And even more so, then you're dealing with a loss of self, a loss of a identity in society, where you're no longer, and this is where the Masonic program really kicks in, referencing really the Master Key System by Charles F. Haanel, that I like to cite because it says it perfectly, that you will be a theoretical abstract ego if you are not identified as a father, a brother, you know, a sister, a mother. If you don't, so when you go in and you look at this, right, when you uncover all of these verisimilitude, proposed truths, right, that take you from Libra, take you from freedom, right, you have to identify what a father is in society, and how a father is the most, who was it? Tom Selleck got on this campaign years ago where he realized, he's like, I'm not letting my kids watch Family Guy or any of these, because all they do is this Pharisee Jewish Play-Doh machine maneuver that really shows that the Masonic order, and there's been a lot of research into this, that points at the Masons being 100% a Jewish organization that is linked in with the Pharisees and the Khazarians, and how could it not be? It's like when people talk about, oh, the Bible is, they allude to, but they just can't say that the Bible seems like it was just one of those pieces of literature that slipped through the cracks while people were being killed, and while they were being forced to believe in something, and while there were a bunch of different versions that were so covert, and it's like you end up picking up this campaign for something instead of going, okay, I'm going to extract what's good out of it, what has meaning to me, even though you have to pick and choose because the verses are a sabotaging agent, And what I've found is most people don't really know anything. What they align with other people based on, and then they cower down, right? And almost beg, befriend people that friended people that friended people that friended people, right? And it's all, and you could say, oh, well, yeah, what are you talking about? Duh, it's all business is based on the orientation with people in a social setting in order to, and that's society. It's like, no, that's not society. Because the whole point to doing that was to be able to go back to your farm, go back to your house, after bringing what could be equally fungibly or fungibly traded as asset for asset, worth for worth, and that's what the tally stick represented. And now you are having to full time, like, engage and interact where you have an open forum with the social networking that through this systematic disclosure fully states its employment with not only witchcraft and druidism, which is all craft. It's a warning. It's saying, look, you get in line or we're psychically going to go into your head and rape you and violate you, and you will realize that you have no freedom. You're going to be hiding. And so what I started doing is I said, F that. I'm going in because I know that the true essence to all of this is power. That at the center of all this, they assume to decide who gets the power and who doesn't. So identify power, right? And then we get into that. And that identification of power is what Dr. Michael Levin researches, what programs, what initiates the program through genetics, and what he finds. And his work is just so highly interesting that I listen to a lot of his lectures over and over again. That he's talking about unlocking the information in the genome, right? And with these axolotls and frogs, where he'll mix up genetics and embryo cells, that he's trying to discover how to turn these switches on and off to where they are almost, well, they become automatic, to a hybrid. And yeah, it's really dangerous work, because when you look at it, but what it does is it discloses, yes, it's hinting at and going far beyond any postulate with transhumanism, but it is showing the power that you have right now that is being blocked. And that, and when I say being blocked, I'm talking about power. I'm talking about the meditative energies of being able to draw in and amass massive amounts of power to where people will notice it, and they will say to you, my God, how is it that you have, I could just feel the power resonating and radiating off from you. You know? And a big part of this, I'm contradicting myself here, really is what is inaccessible to us. What many people don't realize is that vegetables are no longer good for you. And that's where you got the power from. Sprouted grains, getting your protein from natural sources where you pooped it back out and planted more trees, more seeds. And it was this symbiotic relationship. And so we've lost our meaning. So it's amazing to me. So how do I remedy that? I really don't. Limiting the carbohydrates at this point 100% is going along with this sort of Faustian deal where you have to have some sort of substance that you take in, right, that you reroute to energetics, right? And so this is no longer textbook. You can't just go look at, carbohydrates and proteins and you need this much. You really have to identify sources, right? And meanwhile, the waning resources are keeping people back from achieving any of that, to where you do get into this mind state that many people have embraced toward for far too long, which is you live and then you die and life sucks, you live and you die kind of thing, right? So whether or not you do die with your last, up until your last moment, you are entitled as a living life form to command as much power as you possibly can in the form that I'm talking about, which is we have, if bioelectricity is that implicit in our, not only our survival, but our the conductivity of how a human body is created and made to, and of course there's genetic dead ends through modification. And we're born into their hospitals. We're entered into their school systems. We're forced into their food pyramid schemes. We're inducted and indoctrinated into their initiate programs, whether we know it or not, no matter what trade you're in. And invariably, more people are forced into the black market, while this cabal of billionaires wants to emerge as this elite power structure, and they don't see that they are chosen. They are complete buffoons, and they are chosen as those who are so short-sighted that they're incapable of finding meaning. All you have to do is look at them. You look at Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. You look at them and they have zero meaning. And then you look at someone like Steve Jobs, who really seemed like a real human being. Like he really was somebody who ultimately was beginning to realize meaning matters, right? And, you could say I fear for people like Michael Levin, where he's, when you fully back up and realize, what am I developing this technology for? Why do I have this job? Why do I get these grants? Why is all so much money being placed behind me? And it gets into this exotic framework that people fail to see the miserable lives that they live in every single day and how they've been boxed in, because escapism is a big part of the psychology that is being employed as a program, right? So you only feel like you're escaping. So, Dr. Michael Levin, what does that look like? What is the future forecast of that biomolecular hacking? It looks like exotic forms, and you can't remove, when you're talking about form follows function, function into form, you cannot remove the implicit underlying mechanism that is the most important thing here, which is the power, the energy, like Cliff High talks about, and I mention over and over, is this gritology. And I'm gonna get going and make some patties next with that bacon grease. And this is my second day on. I intentionally gained about 35 pounds above where I was, because I was continuously losing weight and feeling I had depleted myself to a state by taking in like fast food type carnivore, and there really is a huge difference with the micronutrients, but I wasn't keeping up on my supplementation, and I couldn't train after a while. I had zero energy, so I'm really trying to start back and build up my vitality with this. And with carnivore, you really have to take in an adequate amount of calories. You can't skimp. And the thing that causes most people to go, oh, I tried that, and I'm not going to be able to do it. They don't eat enough fat. Trust me, fat isn't going to make you fatter. But it's highly imperative that you don't cheat, right? That you don't allow any sort of carbohydrates to enter your lips. But after a while, when you start to lose weight, you need to introduce things like avocado and a few other things that I'm going to be playing with. But you just want to avoid spiking big insulin spikes, And that's the main issue with trying to build in protein powder with in succession with carnivore, is that you are essentially going off carnivore, because you're taking in, once you get away from, so you might want to do olive oil, which I have now, flax oil, with your protein powder. And that will remedy and blunt your insulin spikes. But I'll be doing a little bit more on this because usually when I wake up with a theme, well, every time, and you're connected with a mind, people are approaching, they feel compelled to go on, their form of social media. You got Cliff High on Substack, right? Many other people, and then you have mimics that think that they're mimicking and thieving off of something. They're not really tapped in. But then in those succeeding weeks, days to weeks, you'll see them come out with something that alludes to the same general basic flux, right, of information, transduction, which becomes like when it's alluded to that the word becomes flesh. By the time a message gets to your lips and you're talking about it, like you could look at it as Dr. Michael Levin doing this research doing the grit, using the mind, using the technology, having his team go in and do certain experimental discoveries. Then by the time he does a talk, just a casual talk on the subject, it happens to emerge at the same time that these people over here that are studying more metaphysics, and there really isn't any distinguishing. So these terms are categorizing in such a way where they're not taking into consideration the blending or the hue that happens in between these spherical bodies, right? And base meaning is everything. It's why we get up when we talk about being compelled. It's why we get up in the morning. It's what gives us vitality, right? And some of us are so disenfranchised from it that we see these ridiculous Bozo the Clown, Donald Trump players that continuously volley and rally. This tennis match. It's like, how long can this go on? Well, there is I've very much believed this, and there is a a, a natural. How do I put this? When you look at Neoplatonism, when you look at animism, right? When you take a further investigation into these Platonic truths and solids, right? You begin to get closer and closer, and it would have been great if you could have those minds, right? Those original initial minds going in, like Plato's cave and so forth, but to be able to look at these Euclidean, Platonic, Cartesian, you could almost say Boltzmann brains, right? Like I really am inspired by that Boltzmann brain where you go on. So form follows function, function into form, that you are opening yourself up to becoming that mind, that form, and you may not express yourself in the exact way that nature implies, but nature is correctable. Like when Dr. Michael Levin does these research papers, they will scramble, like the axolotl, or the bullfrog embryo, cells, and they'll do this like molecular scramble where they'll put the eyeballs on the backside, and he calls them, like, he references that as Picasso, right? Rendition or version. And the amazing thing is how it's self-correcting, self-organizing, and he looks for the base genetic prompts to this, right? Or in the bioelectricity, and there's a shared, what he implies is that there's a shared moment, right, where the information is coming from the electricity or the electrical impulses, and not from genetic prompts. So there is there's a bubble, a window that's brought about through spherical energies that have been recognized from through time immemorial, that hint at probabilities. And so when you're looking through a microscope to find these probabilities, to find these spherical energies, right, that we can't see yet, but we're getting ever closer to being able to hack into the subliminal aspects of actually being able to use technology and see what would be termed as metaphysical all along, auras, right? And to be able to realize that telekinesis and all things metaphysics are able to be registered and employed and utilized technologically, to where now with our motor neurons, that which was a very subtle, implicit, subtle aspect to mind and energy generation, is something that can be accessed through this cathartic feeling mechanism, right? And almost like the human body is an instrument and we don't know how to play it. And now that we have validation that we are hitting these certain octave tones, and yes, it registered, now continue on with that. Let's use technology to amplify this. That is the time that we're in right now. And you could say that that is so powerful. And I think what they're going to find is that the ability to reach out into the depths of space and throughout time, going back in time and stretching forward, because there's this very interesting concept that you might want to look into also, and it's this relationship with the past. The past and the present have, we're talking about a postulate, have a relationship where there is an amendability to the past as to what the present derives from the past. So, in other words, an assumed shared experience where people all have this, and it gets into the Mandela effect, right? Where once you see and can prove and can look empirically at the proof that can be registered, how do you change those color hues of the event that occurred in the past that affected the future, the now, and then even more so, now you are more than technically time traveling into the future, because based on the strength of those past events that culminated into a successive mimetic movement. And I'm always pointing back to what's being looked past or looked beyond, which is when typically, like I say, 85-90% of the time when I use the term mimetics, I'm not using it in a way where it's like this mimicking pattern per se, but that it alludes to a succession, and it means the same thing, but you have to look at it from its base. Like there's this succession of numbers, amino acids, that know a system and utilize a system, the bioelectrical system, as to now through this string, this toroidal field, but a string of numbers of code, to unlock and presuppose that growth hormone has already been released. So as the hypothalamus signals the pituitary to release more, it's under the assumption that because these 181 amino acids were pre-registered, right? And the validation to this is just to look at it really quickly and say, okay, the first 181 are there. It's already happening. Let's continue to release more, right? To excrete more. And so that is the phenomenology that's involved, I believe, with the double slit. Because where do these prompts come from? But the quantum, from the submolecular, So by presupposing a thing, I usually called this, Descartes, like Cartesian, the cart before the horse. That when people believe a lie, you're sociopath, right? They can, based on the strength of that, they can affect future events. Because people who are looking for meaning arrive at the truth, and not in verisimilitude, but they want to see the absolute truth, right? But the absolute truth is being heavily occulted and manipulated, machinated against, to where those, like Donald Trump is a perfect example. He's a complete and total sociopath. He is a sadistic gaslighter, but in the end, you see how he breaks down. He can no longer continue on with his violent outbursts, right? And people wait for it. And yet you have these people on the flip side of this who are searching for meaning, doing everything that they can. So many people are just forgotten in history. because this is happening as an event at such a state that it's expected that you don't go there, right? You don't go toward absolute or total truth. From Bob Marley to JFK to other people that you don't even really notice, people that are knocked off, and a lot of times they die very young, of bizarre things like cancer. And then when you look at Dr. Michael Levin's research, cancer research, he made a statement the other day that really got me thinking, and that was when he talked about cancer, cells, and it was kind of like, well, these mutations, you know, they could almost be looked at more as an evolutionary process. Like he was saying, it's amazing that that doesn't happen more often, right? So, like the body being recursive and finding a way, right? Being amendable, that this prime aspect to the self is, and this is what he kind of implies, right? He doesn't even have to say this because the research is drawing on field information that is already imprinted, existent, and pulling from a place that now cannot be registered. But once it is, it's going to be, and I think that this is what's being blocked, is the fact that the error margins, the margins of correctability, a sort of again, we use this term for lack of a better, but this sort of prima materia or materia prima of first substance could also be seen as a genetic blueprint that exists in the field around us that we bioelectrically bring closer to us. That's almost like this nursing or doctoring aid, to where when we align through the mind, through mental mind projections, that we are sick, we certain validator nodes, certain notions of mimetic breaks have become obvious to the field around us, that in our calling out, in our expression to heal thyself, to fix thyself, we are not only calling on the genetic information that's available and possibly going under the guise of certain mutations, exposure to rays or elements that do not allow the origin of the genetic material to exist, that there is a bioelectrical feedback system that reaches out through time and space, really into the material of the field around us, and harkens back, brings back. It becomes a harbinger to the progression of these energies as to undulate, vibrate. So there's like a cymatic call and a cymatic connection through a cybernetic control arm that supersedes and goes beyond any sort of machinating control over this, and that is really what this cabal is most afraid of, is that we can unlock that, so they give us little pieces of what we don't even want. And they're also on the flip side, they're fascinated, and they call, they're already terming, oh, this is the Antichrist, this is this, because ultimately what they're doing is they're trying to set up the people, or a particular person that comes into this and becomes privy to how to access this divine energetic interplay, as to become the event that heals and fixes through a kinetic sequence, like the domino effect, but it's going off and reverberating in every direction, that it will ultimately destroy what is nature, Neoplatonism, Dasein, however you want to term it, will finally have this daunting realization collectively that we are under attack. Like, this is happening, but it will already be done through this backdoor mechanism. It could be a conjunction, a natural conjunction that really casts a certain type of ray or light upon this that makes it inevitable to where there's this refraction of mental mind projection that appears to take place in a specific localized event, but it is only finding the most willing or open subject in the material world to create this echo chamber of healing and basically call out all the agents that are attacking and keeping that display from happening. So we talk about a singularity or a great reset. I believe that this is always being done intentionally as a way to subvert and cast a scapegoat blame back on the people, and that they just assume that this cycle is going to be something that happens over and over again. But even the evil Jews are looking for a warrior Messiah. Even evil Islam is looking for a warrior Messiah. Even Christians, when they really get down to it, and they see how the biblical story plays out, are really searching for justice, right, in the form of a warrior Messiah. And to imply Messiah is to say that this is in the flesh, this is happening, but it is not going to be as dressed and pretty as you think, because much of this information, where you assumably thought, oh, this comes from the Father, which becomes undeniable because it's like it is a male mechanism of violent response that says my arms aren't going to be enough, my eyes aren't going to be enough as one singular person. I'm going to have to employ the power that has been manipulated, machinated against, conjured up through this foul play of druidic and witchcraft means and mechanisms, right? To where I'm going to have to take control of the Merkaba of the system and operate 100% through the cathartic mental mind registry that only words like qualia or noumenon or others that really identify and clarify this is happening. This is an experience within me. This is an experience without me, right? And to say that all physics laws are going to be broken, to where this acquisition of the mental mind process, that nature itself, assumable nature itself, is going to search for this agent, and this agent is going to aggressively assert control over this nature, and that is the phenomenon that is being coaxed and prodded by the Pharisee Khazarian Zionistic mechanism, right? And it's being pussyfooted around, right? That there's a pandering, but there's always this sort of play where nobody's getting into this tussle or this fight, and that is where the true power lies, is in through the mental mind operation that is undeniably the spirit, that's undeniably a fully maturated soul that has been cast out and basically used as a dartboard, as a cleaning mat, right? And now that this is happening, a reset, a golden era is the sort of paramnesia fantasy outcome of this, right? But that it does not take into consideration the fallibility, the folly of how these Schadenfreude-based perverted society would interplay into this. In fact, like it's inferred or conjectured into this, that this is going to be a golden era. There's going to be, 1,000 years of peace or whatnot. I believe that whatever that alludes to, if you really want to go in and look at this as an ancient tribal deity, that this was fully witnessed. And you could get into like ideas of the piranha and so forth, but that this energy is going to be culminating into one main figure head, because that person is searching for meaning and is most open to it, but mainly that this person has learned to access and work with this energy that is not being it's not getting attention, because most people don't really care about it. All they want at the end of the day is that they will completely sell out, like paraphrasing Thomas Jefferson, where people give up their freedom. It's not liberty. They're giving up their freedom for a little bit of security, and they have no security in the first place. Like there never was any security. Like when you look back and you go, wait, what was he alluding to? If everyone was coming to America from, let's say the UK, right? That, and then from other European countries as well, right? That would serve in this sort of indentured servitude, right? A lot of Germans became hired mercenaries to fight wars and were promised, land, and then a lot of that land was pre-machinated against prior to that, plays into the feudalistic system, where they already knew that those farms would invariably become their acquisitionable property. We're talking about a feudalistic government system. And I noticed this many years ago, that no, you have communism and it's alive and well happening in the US. It's just happening on a certain string with certain people. You have socialism taking place every single day. You have capitalism and meritocracy taking place every day. You have several layers of different government systems that follow one another, and then they're bolstered, and there are programs out in play that finance the education, and then the matriculation, and then the unitization into specific corporatized structures. Like IBM is a perfect example. If there was another World War II and there was a Nazi presence, IBM would be signed up to employ their technologies even still. And then you have these figureheads that are taking place out in the open, that are able to work as these agent provocateurs, Manchurian candidates, but it is not a country of origin. It is a belief system, right? And I think the most laughable aspect of this is that the fact that these organizations truly believe that they are sort of sneaking through the back door, and God doesn't notice, for lack of a better, right? That nature doesn't know that the little kitten is trying to creep up behind its back and attack it. But what isn't realized is that nature knows 100% that this little kitty has no claws. This little kitty's bite is going to hurt, but it's not going to be able to even penetrate the skin. That once you reach that cathartic state and set off that reaction, the employment of a not just a mini ice age, but that there is a thermic control mechanism that this cabal thinks that, and this shadow government, we're going deeper, and we're saying, those that government that has been in the possession of this exotic craft and material for the long, right, thinks that it is fully in charge of and operating nature and the field around it, right? That it has hacked into nature itself, right? And we use nature for lack of a better, because if you want to go and call this Luciferianism on one level, Wiccan on another level, Christianity on another level, that you're looking at these surface layers that when you put them all together, the practitioner understands the penetrating mechanism of how to change from one color hue to another, with the engagement of said accessible powers such as telekinesis, remote viewing, and so forth, right? So this becomes intuitive. You could even get into synthetic a priori or a priori, right? And to say that to employ to trump, I hate to use that term, usable, accessible methods that all at once nature has already designed the mechanism to reset this. And no matter how far this cabal thinks that they've taken it, they haven't nearly uncovered enough, and they never will. And once they even permeate and go into these subliminal layers, i.e., time travel, Philadelphia experiment stuff, men who stare at goats, once they really go into this, once they really go into the other side, I think what's going to be found is that there is an arching consciousness that connects all dimensions, all time, all space, and that they haven't even scratched at the surface of this whole thing.